Well, welcome back to the Georgia Show. It's a sad day here in America with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And Bill, I just got something I want to read in an email. Charlie was on the Board of Visitors of the United States Air Force Academy, which is my alma mater. And I've been working with General Bishop and stars.us for some time. And he was elected to the Board of Visitors recently and made a big impact. I just want to read something real quick that General Bishop just sent out. On the sad occasion of Turning Point USA Charlie Kirk's death, and on behalf of the STARS organization, Lieutenant General Rod Bishop, chairman of the board, releases this statement. We at STARS so enjoyed working with Charlie Kirk. He was a wonderful father, patriot, and unmatched voice in opening the eyes of our youth and their elders as to the vision and genius of our founding fathers. We are indebted to his dedicated efforts as a member of the U.S. Air Force Academy Board of Visitors. Charlie shed a searing light on social justice distractions and helped return our alma mater to its mission of preparing air and space warriors to hit the ground running on graduation day. Our love, respect, and prayers go out to his grieving wife and two children. We thank the Lord. He blessed us with his giant, indomitable force for truth and knowledge. Charlie's time with us was much too brief, but we know his words, his vision, and his impact will endure. Bill, I know we've got a lot to talk about today, but do you have anything to say on that subject or not?
Well, it's horrific. The timing is notable that it happens to be the day before 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And, the circumstances continue to evade understanding. At first, they seem to have a gentleman in what looked like custody. Then they come back and they say, no, that isn't the guy. Now comes video, apparently aired by Alex Jones, that shows somebody running across a roof.
Mm-hmm.
If we needed any more confusion, this is it. And it is a shame and a tragedy that we'd claim the life of Charlie Kirk in this circumstance. So our prayers and wishes go out to him, his family, and all his close friends, that they can find peace at the appropriate time here.
Well, I think it's next man up time. I've heard that phrase before. So we cannot quit. We have to keep pushing. And we're going to do that here at the Georgia Show. I will say something on this that briefly, this was a very skilled hit. It was from a long ways away. It was a high-powered rifle. The guy was well placed on the roof. He knew what he was doing, and he shot him in a place which he would not survive. So that's just the facts. So I think this was a very skilled operation. What do you want to talk about today, Bill? And then I'll mention what we're going to go through on my end.
So I had prepared two primary topics. One is I want to give some visibility to David Clemens and the fact that he has once again ignited the professor's record. David has been a bit quiet following the election. I think as many of us were, we kind of needed time to take a deep breath. Mm-hmm. But he has some important topics that he is covering on the professor's record, both on his Substack and on his podcast. And I had the opportunity to catch up with him. I'd like to play an excerpt from that, and we're going to play the entire interview in the coming couple of days so that people can understand a number of the different things that he is bringing forth. I think they're important for every American, and specifically for certain groups and certain folks within the movement, because he draws some, I think, important parallels with things from the Bible and things which can govern our behavior and understanding as we go forward. So I was fascinated with that. And then we're going to spend a few minutes going through what I have positioned as 5 difficult questions surrounding 9/11. I think we're at a stage now and an understanding level where many people have questions. We picked out 5 of those that I believe can help people, if they are still struggling with this, can help people get to the point where they can ask themselves to postulate answers to these, and that activity of trying to come up with an answer, I think, will guide them in their thinking. So that'll be the second part. And then we're going to go to you for a couple of interviews that you've done recently.
Well, the death of Iryna Zarutska was really disturbing to me. If you watch the video, here's this tiny young woman under this monster, knows she's dying, and she sits there crying in her hands, bleeding out, while nobody does anything. I mean, that really, really disturbed me. And so I wanted to talk with Mike Rose. He's an attorney I trust deeply dealing with some military affairs, and he walks through how we can use the civil rights laws to make change in this certain area. So we'll talk about that, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Bill.
Okay, very good. So I mentioned that David Clements, Professor David Clements, which you'll hear me say on the on our discussion, has for a number of years published something called the Professor's Record. And initially, this was his findings, this was his research into some of the circumstances that caused deep questions around the 2020 election. Most recently, he's begun to look at now where we stand and has some fascinating thoughts on a number of areas that border on the biblical and on the spiritual nature of some of the things that we're facing, and provides, I think, a bit of guidance for folks in their thinking on this. So we're going to show an excerpt of this. And again, we wish David very well as he goes into this next phase. And this will just be the first of what I hope to be a number of different discussions that we have with him. Hi, welcome back. This is Bill Quinn. I am honored today to be joined by David Clements, Professor David Clements, who has just recently reignited the Professor's Record. And so we wanted to have him back on and understand the topics that he's covering, and also his thoughts of the time we're moving through. So David, thank you so much for making time for us today.
It's great to be with you, Bill.
So I've been fortunate enough to see Professor Clements speak before several county commissions here in Georgia, and have followed many of the initiatives that he's been a part of. Gosh, you've been part of so many things. You've produced movies. Let My People Go is one example. You've been instrumental in the efforts to free Tina Peters that President Trump has just recently weighed in on, and hopefully that will come to fruition soon. Tell us the motivation or your thinking behind getting the Professor's Record, your publication and now podcast, back up to speed, and tell us some of your goals here, please.
Yeah, well, I really started off with the Professor's Record before I began any of those initiatives. I like you know, in the aftermath of November 3rd, 2020, I just had a ton of questions, and people that were trying to talk about COVID, stolen elections, were all censored and taken offline. And so I've dealt with that myself, but I was able to kind of find a place on Rumble and a few other places where my podcast would survive. And there really wasn't even an intention to do a podcast. It was, I have a curiosity to talk with this expert who's saying this about what happened with ballots in Georgia or someplace else. And I wanted to talk with people that submitted sworn affidavits. I wanted to talk with the attorneys. And so initially the Professor's Record was really, I think, and I don't mean to like brag or anything, but I really do believe this, that it was the first episodic podcast of its kind that had long form conversations that took the time, an hour, 2 hours, to really get into things that most people avoided for I don't know why they avoided it, but getting into the math, getting into the science, getting into statistical deviations. It's a really kind of a tough thing to ferret out the truth. And I mean, I have to admit right now that even my understanding of the problem was in its infant stage. So I look back at a lot of the episodes that I initially put out, and what you really see is a student trying to figure out what happened. But invariably, I saw the emergence of many social media folks out there that are much better at doing podcasts than me. And I felt like, okay, I want to move on from doing the podcast and get involved in actual audits and, commission meetings, and see if we can actually improve the terrain, not just comment on what was going on. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that I felt like the problem in combating the big lie, the real big lie, required a team effort. So I really didn't want to be like my own brand or my own guy. So from about 2022, I wanted to partner with as many freedom fighters just to see if we could build something that's akin to a media network. And so for 3 years, I kind of put my own personal stamp on of things in kind of on autopilot and tried to find other patriots to work alongside. And then 2025, Trump was sworn in, and we had this big blanket pardon for all of the J6ers, which is really my kind of crucible. It was my thing that I couldn't stop working on elections until they were free, because I'd never separated the two.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were free. We still have a few holdovers, but I kind of was struck with the finality of a real tangible victory. And I'm sitting there going, I don't have to get up tomorrow and do a podcast. I don't have to get up and do an interview. So I took about 8 months really trying to get away from all things media, because at some point you kind of turn into a caricature of yourself. You're on autopilot. You're so used to just reciting facts that I didn't really feel like I had as deep a connection in my faith walk. And so it was a good time for me to just kind of shut up and say, Lord, what do you want me to do? And in that silence, I think the impression that I got was, you're not going to out clickbait people. You're not going to go ahead and saturate X with the madness. And it's not my personality, but perhaps offer something quiet and principled, and see if we can shepherd people over what we've all experienced for the past 5 years in a way that maybe even a year from now, some of these videos will still have relevance. So I wanted to get away from current events so much, and talk about principled lessons that should serve us well going forward.
I think that's remarkable, and it parallels in my mind so many things that I think a number of people are experiencing. That there was sort of this end of a phase feeling following the 2024 election and Trump's re-swearing in, and then since then it's been sort of a different phase with the revelations coming out. Early on, things like money flow, USAID money going to all kinds of places, the connections between USAID and some bad actors, George Soros and others, the connections between some of that money and trafficking, especially child trafficking, that have come to light and continue to invade people's dreams and nightmares, if you will, to figure out what's behind that and how to get it to stop. And yet even today, and we just talked about this on another show over the last few days, there's this undercurrent of still people hidden, I think, powers hidden that are pushing back on what Trump is attempting and already in many cases accomplishing. Much of what we saw early on had to do with stopping conflicts, hopefully, or bringing them close to stopping. I think just recently he talked about being able to stop 6 wars, and yet we still struggle apparently with the Ukraine-Russia conflict, at least to some extent. But it is interesting now that we see support for President Trump, even in doing these things, coming from all kinds of places, including apparently Russia. So it begs the question, we were filled with these narratives. Russia's the bad guys. Russia was collaborating with Trump. We've now found that to be completely untrue. And it's a time when it's difficult, I think, for many to accept, gosh, how many lies have we been told? And by whom and why? Why underneath all of this? Why so much push to unseat Trump, who accomplished so much during his first presidency and now is attempting and pushing to accomplish so much in his second? How do you guide people to make sense of that? What is behind this hatefulness to what Trump has and continues to accomplish?
Well, I think you hit it on the head already, that once you come to the conclusion that your own government and your own media lies to you every day, then it's not a giant leap to at least pose the question, are they lying to us about Putin? Are they lying to us about Russia? At least parts of it, right? So there's that. I think for me to maintain my sanity, it's always a good measure to take a step back and look at the larger picture. And I always start with, the spiritual dynamics of something, that good and evil exist, right? And you've got a kingdom of heaven and you've got a kingdom of darkness. And the scriptures really, really highlight what it is to be in each camp. There's the father of lies, and the children echo the lies. So when I look at the media and I look at people that don't have the blood-bought purchase of Jesus Christ in their life, they can't help themselves but to parrot things. I don't even think they're conscious of it. So I look at us like we're kind of just human vessels that are for sale in some respects. Mm-hmm. And the things that come out of Bill Quinn's mouth or my mouth, if we're contemplating truth, should be above board. And what we find are, aspects of the world, whether it's media, whether it's big pharma, whether it's big tech, they can't help but create BS in everything that they touch and do. And so once you kind of have that very, very simple, architecture in mind, you can kind of watch things in a way that doesn't get you off course one way or the other. Because if you don't frame it through a biblical lens, you get stuck into this frenzy of trying to trust a patriot or this guy or this guy. And when they get it wrong, you're wrong with them. You know what I mean? So there's like, and you see it with the controversy with, like, say, Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro and Scott Presler. There are manifestations of people that are more or less supposed to be on our side. And yet the constant noise, conflict, and controversy among quote unquote conservatives really does seem to keep the American people off balance. Like we're just waiting for the other shoe to drop is kind of my perception. Like, well, what does he think? And I get this question all the time. It's like, well, do you trust so-and-so? Do you trust so-and-so? Or do you think this person's good? And the honest answer is no. And I don't know. I mean, really, it's one of those things where you're constantly saying, okay, is what they're saying in alignment with, truth as we find it in the scriptures? And so that's the way that I process these things. I don't always do it perfectly. Sometimes I get caught up in the drama just like everyone else. And I've got people that I love and respect and care about, and others that drive me crazy. But when it comes to, a lot of the things that are coming out even now with evidence over vaccines, devastating testimony.
Yeah.
And yet everyone that's MAGA already knew this, right? But it's amazing that we were able to weather this megaphone from, legacy media telling us that we're dangerous, that we're going to kill people. And it's the exact opposite. So, having that anchor in truth has served us well over the past 5 years, and we're being vindicated by the day.
You can tell this was a wonderful interview, and that is just the first few minutes of it. We'll again air the entire interview in the next couple of days, but we thank David very much for his time to get with us and share everything that he did. There's remarkable insights that I again think will be valuable to many. So with that, we'll go to you, Todd, and maybe we can take a break for just a moment.
Yeah, sure. We will take a break. We'll be right back, guys. Stay with us here on The Georgia Show.
This is a special report.
Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
I'm excited to announce that we're having a huge sale on overstock and brand new products. For example, My Pillow Percale bed sheets, every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. Our Percale bed sheets are breathable, cool and crisp, and they're perfect for spring and summer. And check out Rev 7, the next generation of energy drinks. It tastes great and it gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. Best of all, it's actually good for you. And for a limited time, try our 3-pack absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88. Twin size, full size, queen size, king sizes, all $29.88. Inventory is extremely limited at this price.
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
Okay, Bill, I think you're back up.
All right. So our next segment is about some questions, 5 simple questions, if you will, around 9/11. And the reason we're asking questions is because when you do ask a question, it turns on a part of the recipient's brain that is different than being told something. It, we hope, causes people to consider the possible answers for these questions. And maybe in that process, they'll have something occur to them that is of value as we learn more. And we do believe we're going to learn more in the coming days, weeks, and months about this and, very frankly, other topics, just like we have from the announcements from Tulsi Gabbard and others, Anna Paulina Luna and others, as they begin to disclose things that we've wondered about for many years. So let's begin with this. Question 1, how did an airplane made of aluminum cut through structural steel? And this gives you a sense of some of the parts of the Twin Towers. This is the outer casing, I believe, being put in place, but there's also heavy structural steel that was in the center of the building. We'll show you that in a picture in just a moment. So just consider that question for a moment, and let's take a look at some of the video that was captured both during the event and has been surfaced recently regarding the event. Here's a picture from ground level of the second plane impacting the South Tower. And we're going to give you some facts on it as we get through this. So if we take a look at that flight, that was flight 175. It's a Boeing 767. It was on its way based on its schedule from Boston to Los Angeles. It's important to consider the primary wing components are aluminum alloys, and some of the hardest of those are actually in the structural components. They're inside the wing, not necessarily the skin on the outer side, but they were meant to make the wings more rigid. And you have to ask yourself, how is it possible that this would have been able to cut through structural steel? And you can see it entered pretty close to the center of the building on this side, and then part of the explosion appeared on the opposite side of the building. So it went through a substantial portion of the building. How is that possible? Especially when you look at things like this, where another type of an airline ran into a light pole made of apparently also of aluminum, but perhaps more strengthened, and it actually cut through the wing. So wouldn't this have maybe cut through the wing rather than the wing cutting through the building? Don't know. Here's another picture of the inner workings of the building. This is during construction, and you can see that a lot of the solid structure, the structural steel components, were centered in the middle of the building where the, for example, elevator shafts and so forth would be. And then there was also structural steel on the outside. Let's take a look at another view of this. This is actually taken from north of the two towers, just before the second impact. Watch this closely. This is from a news helicopter, and you can actually hear a bit of dialogue, both immediately following the impact, and then they receive some instructions. Listen to this.
Wow. That apparently does look like it is in the other building at this point. Back off. They're telling us to back off.
They're telling us to back off. Now, one part of this story that I didn't mention at the beginning, I'll simply offer here, is I was actually due to be in New York City on that day. Because of another client's need, I ended up assigning someone to go in my place to New York City, and they were actually in the city at the time of the attack. They were actually up in Midtown, but we didn't know. And I was actually in another city, and for hours we could not contact them because many of the cell repeaters were on top of the twin towers and were almost immediately put out of commission. So you can imagine the worry that went on for a number of hours as we tried to locate my colleague. Ultimately did find out everything was fine and the person was safe, but holds personal meaning for me based on the risk and the worry that happened over those hours. All right, second question. This is the side of the Pentagon, and the Pentagon was impacted by Flight 77, a Boeing 757-200 that was scheduled to go from Dulles Airport to Los Angeles. Again, primary wing components are aluminum alloy. That plane carries this specific plane carried two Rolls-Royce engines weighing 11,900 pounds each, basically 6 tons each. And they're relatively large engines, and there's only 2 of them. Where are the structural components of any part of the plane? Where are the wing components? Where's the tail? Where's the fuselage? Where are seats? Where are bodies? Where is luggage? Interesting questions, certainly. We're going to show this is in part an animated video of what the impact is said to have looked like. And you need to then ask yourself those questions. Where are all these components?
A 60-ton, 125-foot wide, 44-foot tall plane through this obstacle course.
The aircraft, before striking the Pentagon, reportedly executed a 270-degree downward spiral, and yet Hani Hanyur was known as a terrible pilot who could not safely fly even a small plane.
No seats, no luggage, no bodies. Nothing but bricks and limestone.
Okay, let's take a look at this too, just to make sure we understand how large this plane was. The wingspan is either 124 or 134 feet, depending on whether the plane had these little winglets at the ends that many people have seen. It also would have had a tail section almost 50 feet wide, and of course the tail itself that is, I believe, also 30 feet in height or so. Where would all these components have been? You normally would have found these laying around in many crash sites, and yet where are they? Perhaps we get a clue from this report, which has seen very limited coverage, especially in the years following 9/11, but was broadcast on CNN within minutes of them arriving at the scene there in Arlington.
As military affairs correspondent Jamie McIntyre. And Jamie, you got very close to where that plane went down.
That's right, Judy. A while ago, I walked right up to next to the building. Firefighters were still trying to put out the blaze. The fire, by the way, is still burning in some parts of the Pentagon. And I took a look at the huge gaping hole that's in this sideway. But from my close-up inspection, there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. The only site is the actual side of the building that's crashed in, and as I said, the only pieces left that you can see are small enough that you could pick up in your hand. There are no large tail sections, wing sections, a fuselage, nothing like that anywhere around.
So here's another video taken by the Fairfax police as they did an aerial reconnaissance of the damage, within a short time following the impact on the Pentagon.
Wow. Okay, so you get the picture?
Get a picture, I can. Ken, picture up, 10 please.
Entire airplane disintegrated. That is amazing.
Straight down and from the inside where they can't see. I know the smoke's kind of hard to deal with, but close up so they can get a good look.
Okay, I'm going to flip to infrared because the smoke isn't bothering the infrared, okay?
We want to just back off, take a look at the impact area, see what areas are hot from either side.
Okay, so again, you hear this report that they can't find and they can't see evidence of plane components and so forth. All right, let's move on to our next question if we can here. Flight 93, also a Boeing 757, was traveling from Newark to San Francisco. Unlike the other planes that we just saw, there were no buildings involved in this. It crashed ostensibly after a struggle between the passengers and the hijackers, and it crashed in next to a field and into a portion of a forest in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Let's listen to, bear with me for a moment here. Let's listen to this report. I'm going to jump ahead to a particular testimony that I think is quite telling.
I expected to see fuselage, remnants of a plane, which I didn't see anything but pretty much smoke and some fires.
I saw absolutely no signs that an airplane was present, no matter what direction I looked.
You didn't know that a plane had crashed there. You had a crater, and the initial crater was probably 15 feet deep, but we didn't have big plane parts laying everywhere.
It looked like the plane hit, but there's not a lot of evidence of the airplane, and I've described it a lot of times as basically a knife through hot butter.
So again, missing evidence, missing components. which begs the question, where could they have gone if, in fact, a plane impacted there? There would normally be, and if you look at many crash sites, you find leftover evidence that shows what happened, at least as so far as portions of the plane left. Not in this case. And so we've heard that that was testimony from both authorities and one of the FBI residential agents. Next question. Why would World Trade Center Building 7 collapse instantly, essentially, in one fall and completely, having not even been hit by a plane? None of the planes hit this building. It's also known as the Solomon Building. And it appeared to fall in a pattern very reminiscent of a building being demolished. Many people said it fell in its own footprint. And there's two parts to the Building 7 question. Let's talk about this for just a minute. We're going to watch this video.
I turned in time to see what looked like a skyscraper implosion. Looked like it had been done by a demolition crew. The whole thing just collapsing down on itself.
For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
It was almost as if it were a planned implosion. Back from that building before what you're about to see again here on videotape, knowing that fire could not be fought because of the instability of the structure, because of the fire that had burned since shortly after 9 o'clock this morning.
Dana Tyler is joining us in the...
Okay. Now, finally, the other question that revolves around Building 7 is this. The building, again, was not hit by a plane. It fell after 5 o'clock in the afternoon and was reported to have fallen by a BBC reporter while it was still up. We're going to see this in just a moment. Let's take a look at this.
Now, more on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago, I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attacks. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense downtown in New York behind me, down by the World Trade Centers, of just an area completely closed off as the rescue workers try to do their job. But this isn't the first building that has suffered as a result. We know that part of the Marriott Hotel next to the World Trade Center also collapsed as a result of this huge amount of falling debris from 110 floors of the two twin towers.
Now, this is very interesting. We're going to skip back and forth here for just a moment, and then we're going to show you the end of the, we're going to try to show you the end of her report. But look over her, what we see as her right shoulder, her left shoulder, we're looking to the right, just beyond her head. That, in fact, is the Solomon Building. They are reporting that it has already fallen, yet it is up. How is that possible? And if it in fact was up, how, why, and what would cause them to report that it had fallen when it's still visible in the frame? Watch what happens close to the end of her broadcast here. Just a minute. I'm going to skip forward. And she continues to report on the circumstances. And then this happens.
I don't think people can sink in to people what's happened.
We haven't for the past hour or so heard much from the people of Manhattan. You're with them there. I mean, what are they saying tonight after this catastrophic attack?
As I said, many just cannot believe this has happened, and I've seen you know, big burly men and women with you know, tears in their eyes today, shaking their heads, wondering what on earth is going on. There was a sense of panic. Our reports from the scene were of people just absolutely horrified. And I've already seen some photographs of that a man took down in the downtown area, and it looks like the aftermath of a huge atom bomb or something, just full of debris and of like a white carpeting of snow from all the dust and rubbish that had fallen. I think people are still numb, and I don't think people are talking about revenge in that way at all yet. I think people are still too traumatized. We don't know how many people have been killed. We can't even put a figure. I think when you talk to people on they daren't even say how many people might have been killed and injured. And I think that feeling, until the idea of the devastation, people do.
There at the bottom, you can see the 47-story Salomon Brothers building has also collapsed, yet it is still visible over her shoulder.
Don't really know what to say or what to think. I think they feel the bubble of their security as being in America has definitely been popped. This city and this country will not be the same, but they don't really know where to turn. That's the very sad thing. I think there's going to be a lot of very, very traumatized people that has hit them very, very hard.
Jane, I think many of us, when we heard the news, perhaps on the radio earlier today,
And all of a sudden they begin to lose their
completely
signal.
flabbergasted by it and just couldn't comprehend it. I mean, it almost sounded too far-fetched. I was wondering what it's felt like for you being in Manhattan. Well, unfortunately, I think we've lost the line.
Isn't that interesting? That would be lost just at that moment after they put the Chiron up with the notice that the Salomon Brothers building had come down, and yet it was standing directly in the frame. So where we go with this next, one of the questions many people have said is, oh, well, you know, the buildings came down because of the fires in the Twin Towers when we go back to Towers 1 and 2. I looked up via Google AI this afternoon and asked it, how hot does jet fuel burn? And this is the answer I got. I didn't even ask about steel. It said jet fuel burns in the range of 800 to 1500 degrees Fahrenheit in open air conditions, with higher temperatures possible inside a jet engine's, combustion chamber or in oxygen-deprived environments. The temperature is not hot enough to melt steel. Not hot enough to melt steel. So for those who say, well, gosh, the fire must have melted the buildings. Well, that would explain where the fire was. The fire was up on in one building up on floors 90, I think, and above, and then the other building in floors 77 and above. But what about below? What would have caused the failures there? So as we go forward, we're going to, I think, learn more. Tomorrow, Tucker Carlson on the Tucker Carlson Network will air a 5-part series that talks about 9/11, and I have a funny feeling that the information they will bring forward will, in many ways, add to any questions that we've posed today. And we encourage folks, if you can, to review this. Now, for folks that are members, I guess, of Tucker Carlson Network, you could see it all at once. But they will be airing a 5-part series. I think they're going to do it over the course of 5 individual weeks, and for folks that aren't members. So, again, we respect the work that Tucker Carlson has done on a number of topics. This looks like it may be the next one, and we encourage folks to consider reviewing that as it reaches either X or the Tucker Carlson Network. So that's it for 9/11 for the time being. Todd.
Okay, so I just want to give a shout out to a couple of our sponsors. Let me throw this up, mypillow.com. If you're looking for the gift for somebody for Christmas, that person who may have everything that you just don't know what to get them, I would highly recommend looking around mypillow.com. Use promo code CDM, get the best discounts. But I love the mattress toppers. I can't wait to get home. I travel a lot, and it's like sleeping on a firm cloud, I call it. So that's one option if you're looking for a Christmas gift. We're going to do this more often going into the holidays. just to give people ideas of how you can buy great stuff for your family, but also support free media. So with that, I sat down with Mike Rose. Mike Rose is a very accomplished attorney. He's done a lot of interesting litigation, supporting different clients in the military, outside the military, and is versed in civil rights law. He's not an expert, but he's versed in it. And so I wanted to get him on because the murder of Iryna Zarutska really, as I mentioned, disturbed me. And I would encourage you to look at the video. It's very difficult, not just the initial video, but the full video of her sitting there alone, crying in her hands until she bled out. This is just horrific, and we're better than this, and we need to rise up against this and not accept hurting defenseless women like that, young girls. And so I wanted to highlight what Mike has to say on how to use the civil rights law. There's been a lot of pushback against the civil rights law that it allowed for decades the wrong side to gain traction with their agenda in the country. But Mike thinks, it's going to take a lot to change that, but Mike thinks it can be used in our favor going forward. So I think you'll enjoy this. Well, the news of the Ukrainian young lady being murdered on the train in Charlotte, North Carolina, has caused quite a stir. It's on the news, and the ramifications of that are reverberating around the country. And the first person I thought of to talk about this was Mike Rose, an attorney, accomplished attorney. And the reason I wanted to talk to Mike is because Harmeet Dillon, the civil rights DOJ leader, said yesterday this is a civil rights issue. Mike, have you looked into this whole situation? I mean, what do you see happening on the world stage here with this?
Well, I think it's very interesting. First of all, I have great respect for Harmeet Dillon.
Mm-hmm.
She's very competent, very smart, very experienced in civil rights law, and had her own law firm in California where she brought many lawsuits successfully regarding civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in addition to the criminal charges filed against the man who killed the Ukrainian woman, there's the other area of what civil action could be taken by the government for violation of civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
There are numerous laws that I don't have a command of that prohibit discrimination based on certain things like race and gender, but basically government exists to enforce or protect people's rights as defined in the Constitution, as defined in statutes. So the real issue becomes really twofold. One is, where does one civil rights begin and somebody else's end?
Mm-hmm.
Let's take transgender, for example. The transgenders who the males who want to compete in women's sports because they say they're women, say it's a violation of their civil rights not to be allowed to do so. The women who have biological males competing against them say it's a violation of their civil rights. So who's going to decide or determine who's right? And that's a matter of those definitions are provided by Congress and statutes, and by the courts interpreting the statutes and the Constitution. And sometimes it's not really clear one way or the other how to decide. But in the case of this Ukrainian woman, she's on public transportation. Evidently, the federal government has chosen to impose criminal, to pass criminal laws imposing criminal penalties for crimes committed on public transportation.
Mm-hmm.
This is sort of similar to civil rights laws requiring public accommodations like restaurants to be able to discriminate and so forth. But what's happened here is Harmeet Dillon through the Civil Rights Division is evidently going to come in addition to the criminal charges. So you have a U.S. attorney prosecuting the crime, but you got Harmeet Dillon prosecuting the Civil Rights Division violations, at least investigating them. And one significance of that is that it becomes very broad then. It's like who's conspiring or causing this person to be used like that, to be able to commit that crime, and to what extent are they culpable?
That was my question, because this guy's obviously judgment proof. He has no assets. He's just a thug, 14 times arrested. But the train system in the city, I mean, can a pressure be applied to these laws that way, do you think?
I think so. First of all, funding can be cut or threatened to be cut. And of course, you see that already where, like universities, where President Trump is cutting money, and it makes sense logically. It's like, we don't have to give you any money.
Yeah.
If we're going to give you money, there's going to be conditions on it. One is not to violate people's civil rights, not to be anti-Semitic, and keep students from being able to attend without fear their classes. So it's the same thing. You should be able to get on public transportation. But the real fascinating issue to me is how far is this going to extend? Because what you have are liberal judges and prosecutors not prosecuting, or just letting the same criminals out. And let me just draw an analogy. We know there was a judge in, I think, Wisconsin, who actually was removed from the bench and is being prosecuted for helping an illegal immigrant to escape. Okay, so that was a very overt interference with one, violation of criminal law, violation of immigration law, but secondly, arguably, it's interfering with my civil right not to have this person who's, if he was a criminal, especially out threatening the population. So there's going to be a lot of litigation as a result of an aggressive civil rights division. By the way, Harmit Dillon, I saw an interview with her where she said that a large number, like hundreds, I think, of lawyers in the civil rights divisions quit. As soon as the first meeting, she said that our agenda is, we're going to enforce President Trump's agenda, and if you don't want to do that, you should leave, and they did. And she's actually shorthanded. She was shorthanded so much that she actually, I heard her say, basically, look, if you got a lawyer out there who's interested in this subject, please come and contact us, even if they have no experience. So she's got her hands full, because all the civil rights division scope is going to be broader than even the criminal scope, because criminal laws are narrower. Let me tell you how effective this can be. In my town, there were 6 women came to me. I'm in a town 20 miles from Charleston, and they complained that they were being sexually harassed and discriminated against and racially harassed. 3 of them were Black in their fire department. And I had them fill out affidavits detailing all this. And then I gave it to the town council, wouldn't do anything. So I went to Washington and had a seminar, a continuing legal education seminar about, I guess, civil rights. In the question and answer session, I stood up and said, anybody got any experience with a small southern town? And I described what was happening. The head of the Civil Rights Division walked up to me and gave me his card. And when I provided the information in the affidavits, they did like over a year investigation that wound up with the fire chief resigning and a bunch of changes being implemented. So this is an example where there's statutory authority for the Civil Rights Division to do investigations and impose some kind of penalties. I don't know the details of how this works. It's a specialized area of the law. But Harmit Dillon is very smart. She knows what the law is capable of doing, and they're going to push to enforce people's civil rights, and rightly so. So what this comes down to now, I used to struggle myself with, like, well, to what extent should my views be imposed on somebody else? I have a lot more clarity about this now. Our American creed is embodied in our founding documents, like the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. It's based on Judeo-Christian values. And look, you can live and let live. If you want to have your whatever you want to do as an adult, okay, but don't infringe on my rights and my culture and our values. And that's exactly what's happening when unvetted illegals are allowed in our country.
Yeah.
Have mental deficiencies, like this person is said to be schizophrenic. And then you have liberal judges and district attorneys who wind up not incarcerating the people that are committing violent crimes and releasing them so they can kill people like this woman yesterday.
Well, so that could be really the key that picks the lock to stop a lot of this Soros-funded DA issues where they're not prosecuting and all that. You know, there's been a lot of criticism of the civil rights law in the last year or so because of people are saying it enabled a lot of this, enforcing your ideology on others over the last couple decades. But maybe this can be used against that as well.
Well, it's a political decision how much to enforce and how to interpret certain laws. I mean, the law is imperfect, so and not only that, my civil rights and your civil rights may be, in your view, may be clashing.
Yeah.
So we have courts that interpret it. We have government officials like district attorneys, but we have, in my view, a conservative government now, and Harvey Dillon is implementing President Trump's agenda, and his agenda includes getting violent people off the street, and not subjecting innocent people like this young girl that just got killed to the threats of violent criminals being on the loose and mentally ill, evidently. So
well, that just, if you watch, there's more of the video out of her actually getting killed, and it's horrific. I mean, it made me sick. People need to watch that and understand what's happening. It's not just some, incident on the train. I mean, she's sitting there crying and she's dying. I mean, it's bad.
Evidently, she knows she's dying. Nobody's helping her. Nobody's applying pressure. And what's also angering to me is the inconsistent, hypocritical way the press treats us, the mainstream.
Yeah.
So if that had been a white person doing it to a black, it would have been nonstop national news. Because it's a black against a white, it doesn't fit their narrative, and they basically ignore it. And when they don't ignore it, they frame it differently, like Trump's trying to exploit this, and this kind of thing. So the real story, according to the leftist media, the mainstream media, is not that she got killed by an illegal that was released repeatedly after being arrested. Instead, that it's being advertised or talked about.
Yeah.
So it's really heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was. I know the Ukrainians well, and they're good people, and that's just horrific. Mike, thank you very much for your time. I kind of made you work today, so sorry about that. Take care. Have a good day.
All right. Thank you.
Back at you, Bill. What else do we got today?
That's it for the time being. Again, we look forward to seeing what Tucker and I wonder if others will bring out tomorrow. I do know that there will be Tucker will be with Clayton Morris, I believe, down at a redacted event in Washington, D.C. To do a number of different things and perhaps honor the 9/11 date. So we'll see. And we'll be ready to cover what happens as we reconvene on Sunday at 2 p.m.
I saw Catherine Herridge came out with a video yesterday about the Saudi government officials who were casing D.C. prior to 9/11. It was a pretty convincing video, but I started wondering, and I trust what Catherine says. That's not the issue, but I started thinking that we're going to see narrative control start happening, right? I mean, because all of this disclosures are going to come and people are going to try to move you back to the old paradigm.
Well, I think we've never seen narrative control go away. We just talked in the last show about the apparent Epstein victims, and they're saying one thing about they're going to announce and release all this client information. Yet the undertone of it was, oh, well, Trump's part of it too. And they're spending their time trying to convince everybody that somehow Trump is a bad guy and was involved with Epstein in an inappropriate means. Yet the interviews with the actual victims indicate the opposite. They were asked on a video I saw this week, did you ever see Trump do anything inappropriate around anything to do with this Epstein stuff? And the answer was no, never. So I don't think we've seen an end to the narrative manipulation, I guess we'll call it. And we need to be on the guard for that. And our listeners need to be on guard for it and asking the right questions. If they see something that seems to be even a small bit amiss, start checking the facts and find out what's really going on.
So tomorrow I'll be on the skiff at 10 a.m., 10 to 12, Monday through Friday Eastern. We're going to have some great guests the last 2 days of the week. Tom Renz, Pete Blaber on the Ukrainian sit rep. I've got Xi Van Fleet, who survived the Maoist revolution, the Cultural Revolution in China, and others. But just a teaser or something to think about, and maybe you want to watch, is that the strike last night from Russia on Ukraine, where there were allegedly close to 20 drones that entered Polish airspace. Well, it's come out that those drones, if they were launched from Russia, didn't have the range to reach Polish airspace. And a lot of people are thinking this was a false flag by Zelensky launching drones into Poland to possibly draw NATO into the conflict. So we're going to be on that tomorrow. So check us out. Pete Blaber will be on at 11, but the show starts at 10. That's all I got, Bill. Thank you.
All right, that's great. We'll see you next time, Sunday at 2, and the skiff tomorrow morning with Todd Wood.